Welcome to a new edition of If I Ever Live to Be. Today I am joined by Avery, and she is founder of LifeKnight, which we are going to get into all those things and a little bit of a technology conversation. So we're going to learn together today. Avery, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and I've been teasing that I owe royalty checks to Buffy and Matt Payne because I had another guest on earlier this month that they have sent my way. They have sent many guests my way and then introduced me to many amazing people. And I met you through Buffy. So
yeah,
I'm so thankful for that.
They're incredible.
So you are fresh off of South by Southwest.
Yes. What an experience.
Oh, I bet. I have followed, I've probably followed South by Southwest since I became a business owner. I've never been to an event, but they always are posting things on social media and YouTube. So I definitely want to touch on that, but I'd love to dive into what led you up to that, right? Because that is such a big accomplishment to pitch at South by Southwest. So tell us about LifeKnight and share the experience that you went through that gave you this idea.
So the idea started almost 10 years ago. Can't even believe it. I was a real estate broker, and I had started several real estate companies. And my last one was in Florida, in Central Florida. And I was out showing a property to an individual I hadn't met, and it turned into a very scary situation. He was a very disturbed person. He, the minute I walked in there, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I knew something was wrong. Every alarm bell in my body went off. Like, you have to get out of this property quickly, and you have to find out a way to do it that doesn't upset him. And he tried to get me to go upstairs. He tried to, keep me in the property. And luckily I had enough street smarts to get myself out of there. And even though I was able to do that, he followed me to my car, almost pinned me up against my car. And, I feel like I barely escaped. Was very shaken up and called the police. He did have a record. Wow. And after that, I was just like, wow, I'm thousands of miles away from my family. I was single. I did not have anyone who knew where I was or who I was with. And if I hadn't come home or something was wrong or he had taken me somewhere, how would anyone ever know? And the thought of that just terrified me. It was the first time I ever realized how dangerous that profession could be. And so I've always been a very technologically forward person. In every business I built, I built systems, and I always use the latest and greatest tech out there. So I'm like, there's got to be something that can protect me while I'm out doing this and others. And there was just nothing. And I was shocked because this is a big profession. People are, how easy is it for you to get someone in an empty building or home that you see on a billboard? It's just, it's perfect. A perfect storm for a crime to happen. Yeah. And a lot of crimes have happened. So I happened to be on the Space Coast, which had a ton of tech talent. And I was going to these meetups, these tech meetups. And one day I just said, I want to build this thing. I'm not a coder. And I was able to get help from that group of people. And that's how LifeKnight was born. It actually started as Lois, the safety app, which we still have, built on top of the LifeKnight platform. And now we're focusing on the entire platform. But that was really the way it all evolved and the birthplace of the idea.
Yeah. Wow. So walk us through how it works, because I know there's an AI component, there's geolocation, and you can use it with any cell phone and even wearables, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. It started as an app that would call and text you and check up on you. And if you did not respond, we would send the information to an emergency contact or the police with your
Mm.
geolocation. And that has since evolved into adding AI integration with AI agents and wearables. So, and we kind of pivoted as well from more consumer facing to now we're working with large businesses for workplace safety. So it can work in a lot of different ways. The app still works the way it was intended, but what we have with the wearable integration is we now can get biometric information.
Okay.
So we now are sort of going into the health monitoring area a little bit. We're looking into helping seniors and people in the workplace that are, not even traveling, although that we do cover lone workers who are out traveling or people like realtors and brokers like myself. But it can monitor things now like your heart rate variability, your body temperature, and with geolocation, take an Alzheimer's patient, for instance, who's in the home, we can alert caregivers if somebody wanders outside of the home. So it has
Wow.
all these other proactive ways of protecting people that we had never really envisioned 10 years ago. And the great thing about it is it works without user interaction. So, my whole thing was, why isn't there something out here that can figure something out before it happens or before I need to do something? Because everything else, you have to press a button, you have to
Yeah.
take action. What if you can't? What if you're drugged? What if you're scared? What if you're unconscious? So
Wow.
we've really
Yeah.
taken it to the next level.
Yeah. So, what are some of the signs that it will pick up on? I'm thinking like, I know you mentioned temperature change and things like that, but I'm even thinking like heart rate, right?
Yeah.
If you're in a scary situation, that heart rate is going up. So, what are some
Yep.
things that it's picking up on to be able to tell that this is in a bad situation?
Heart rate and temperature will go up, and the user or the company that's buying this for their employees can decide the escalation. So most companies want to handle something in-house and to find out what's going on with the person. So if the heart rate spiked incredibly, for instance, we could send an alert saying, "Hey, are you okay?" And then after that, we could send something that says, "This person is not responding, their heart rate is spiked. You might want to check up on them." The original iteration was escalating it to the police. We still have the capability of escalating it to the police or first responders. But there's sort of a tier to that escalation now because, you could see something and it could startle you and your heart rate could spike and it's not always going to be an
Right.
emergency. So
Right.
we have to be cognizant of, not treating everything like an emergency. Body temperature is more for if somebody's potentially getting sick or going to faint or things like that.
Okay.
We do have a panic option as well. So if someone is able to press a panic button, either on the wearable or the phone, it will send their geolocation immediately to the police or their supervisor or their spouse or whoever they set it up to go to, or both. So there's an option to do that. It can pick up if somebody is in an unsafe area. So we've talked to Kennedy Space Center as an example for hazardous workplace environments. And they have a lot of areas that new workers could potentially go into and get really hurt or die. So we can detect that and make sure, just like the Alzheimer's patient going outside of their home, we can make sure that they don't go into a restricted area. So those are
Interesting.
some of the examples.
Yeah. And I'm even thinking of, gosh, there's so many applications because it sounds like too, I'm even thinking of like construction workers. I live in Atlanta. We're not hot Atlanta for no reason. It gets super hot in the summer and people are working outside. I mean, there are physiological changes that start to take place before, once you're getting dehydrated, possibly before you faint. Tell us a little bit about that. And then, you know, I even, when I was watching the South by Southwest pitch, I was thinking to myself, I could almost hear employers pushing back on this of like, well, what is the cost of every employee?
Mhm.
We're going to have to get this or whatever the case is. Like, I almost feel
Mhm.
like that would be the pushback.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, you know, okay, anything that you do, you could argue is going to be expensive, but like the flip side of not taking action is more expensive than you taking a step forward for that protection and looking out for your employees, or again, you know, with your Alzheimer's patient example.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. Well, we've done extensive research on this, and reactive safety is expensive.
yeah.
It's billions and billions of dollars for organizations every year. The larger the organization, the higher the risk, the higher profile the organization, the higher the risk. And you would think that just protecting your people is enough. It's enough just to say, these people are potentially in a situation that is a little risky. And in the case of maybe senior living centers, especially, you would think that organizations would want to protect those folks that are paying a lot of money, a lot, in some cases, to live there. Unfortunately, capitalism doesn't work that way always. Not to say there aren't some organizations where that is important to them, but we've shown them where it really comes out in the bottom line. So proactively heading off lawsuits and dealing with employee retention, and just even coming across as a workplace that cares, is extremely important. But we can really show how it will save them money in the long term. And then there's all these other intrinsic PR benefits that they get. And so we actually haven't
Mhm.
had much pushback. We've found that the organizations that get it have a line item for this. We're not going to change the
Interesting.
minds of organizations that don't care. So we're going after the ones that get it, and they already have an expense line for workplace safety, which is great.
Yeah. Well, I'd love for you to share. Really, the question in my mind is twofold, because I would love for you to share how you had this idea and didn't let like lack of knowledge or resources stop you from bringing it to tuition. But it also sounds like, you know, even for those companies, businesses that have this as a line item, there's an element of education that
Mhm.
comes with it. So I'd love to hear, you know, just about all the way from sourcing it to getting it off the ground to like, okay, now, you know, we're spending that time, because I would wager you're probably going into these companies and explaining to them the importance and also just how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, we really started. So we just started commercializing the platform last year. Started as a
And
safety app. It was consumer facing. We were working with social workers and realtors, and there were some issues there in them adopting it and thinking it was important. And this was years ago. And we were consumer facing. So we pivoted, COVID happened. We had a product that was, we're going to protect you when you're out and about. And then nobody was out and about. And that was sort of that hiatus, let's call it, helped me look at the bigger picture. And then after we decided that we were really going to showcase the platform, we integrated the AI detection and the wearables. That's when we started really getting out there into the marketplace.
yeah.
So we're still pretty new, and education is a huge part of that. And it's still new what we're doing. So we're on the cutting edge of safety detection and being proactive as opposed to reactive, integrating direct connections with 911, which no other company does the way we do it. I've talked to people who don't believe that we can do what we can do. People who have been in the industry for like decades, who they're like, no, it's impossible. I'm like, well, that's what people said about the smartphone, right?
Mhm,
And everything
mhm,
else that's now commonplace. So
mhm.
I think education is easier now because people realize that we can live in an intrinsically very dangerous world in some ways.
Yeah.
But I don't like to play off of the fear factor. I like to come from a proactive point of view, again, showing them the dollars and cents of protecting their people and what it's going to do for their company overall. And the technology is easy to showcase because it integrates with everything they're already doing, existing workflows, existing apps. If they don't want anyone to know that we're even present, other than they just have this cool new safety feature, which we're kind of experiencing with a large real estate company in the Bay Area, they don't have to know we're even there. We can be seamless and in the background.
Interesting.
So yeah.
Well, I think that point is so important too, of just building it, going after it, but then also knowing who your market is. Like you said, if it's not a line item for everyone, focusing on those companies that they do have that allotted, and pitching to them, and really integrating in. And I think that's so important, especially when you're new on the market, right? It's almost like finding your people, connecting not only with who's going to help you build it, but who your buyer is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So then you go to South by Southwest. Walk us
Mhm.
through that experience. How did that come about? What was it like being on stage?
Oh my gosh, I'm still kind of reeling from the whole
Yeah.
thing. Just been back a couple days. It's crazy because I never even knew they had a pitch competition until last year. I thought it was a music festival, which it's what it started as. I'm a
Yeah.
musician, and I always wanted to go to the music festival, which of course I missed because I had to come back for work. So I kind of missed that part of it. But I found out that they actually did pitch competition last year, and I applied. They had a new category, which is space tech, government, and security, or space gov tech and security.
Yeah.
So I was like, I think we might fit in here. And I honestly didn't think we would get in. I really didn't. It was just sort of a whim. And I got the email that we were a finalist. And I was like, what?
Because you have to send, like, you basically have to pitch to be considered to pitch.
Oh yeah, there's like 700 or, almost 700 companies that apply.
Yeah.
45 get in.
Wow.
In 9 categories. So there were 5 in my category, including
Yeah.
LifeKnight. And we didn't win our category, but we went up against government contracting companies and companies that were doing cool things with space. So I was like, they're going to pick one of those, I'm pretty sure. But it was incredible, just the whole process. And there was a lot, we got coaches and we were coached for months leading up to it. And there was a lot of prep, and I didn't realize what a big deal it was. I had no idea. I didn't know it was like a global stage. I didn't know that this was like winning an Oscar nominee, being an Oscar nominee, and you could have that for the rest of your career. I went into, which might have been a good thing because then I wasn't
Right.
as terrified. But it was good. We got there, we had a day of practice, and I redid my entire pitch that night after the practice.
Wow.
So got back to the hotel, redid the pitch. It was too long. There were things that weren't conveying. And so that was a little nerve wracking. And, but when I get up on stage, I always feel like something takes over, and that's where I really shine. So that part was great. And the aftermath, I never felt more relieved in my life, really. Like I was so relieved and happy. And now I can just say it's something that I did. And, we're getting into the phase of growing this company. And so pitching is probably going to be sort of a thing of the past. But it was great. It was great.
You
And
never know who
Austin
you're
is a
going to
great
meet.
town.
And yeah, when you never know who you're going to meet in those situations too. You never know who's in the audience
I
listening.
know. There's been some people who've reached out, and so I'm kind of waiting to see, who's going to reach out and what's going to come of it. But it was fun, exhausting, but fun.
Yeah. Um, I'd love for you to share, what do you tell others who are kind of in the same space, Avery? Maybe they've got an idea and, maybe they've kicked it around for years and they're like, no one's going to listen to this. No one's going to want this. How am I going to do this? I'm too old. I don't know this. I don't know that. What do you say to that individual?
Well, you're never too old to do anything, I always say,
Thank you.
ever in your whole life. You
Yeah.
should be reinventing yourself until you're dead. That's how I look at things. I would say honestly, don't do it unless you have such a passion and such a fire in your belly for this thing that if you don't do it, you will regret it. But if there's any other reason, I would say don't, because it is one of the most impossible things to do to be a founder, especially a bootstrap founder, especially a woman, but even male founders. It's the hardest thing I have ever done in my whole life. And there were many times when I wanted to quit,
Yeah.
multiple times over the years that I almost quit. And something would always happen to make that not the case. I've always said this has been a divinely guided journey. So it's kind of like not about me. But
Yeah.
if somebody has that fire and they know that this is something that the world needs and they just have to do it, then go for it. What I would say is do customer discovery immediately before you do anything.
Mm.
I didn't even know customer discovery was a thing until a couple of years ago. I had no idea that there was a whole process for it. So I would say do that immediately right up front to see if your idea is really going to be a business. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's more of a volunteer thing, or maybe it's going to be a nonprofit or something. But that's something that I wish I had done earlier. Although I'm not sure the world wouldn't have mattered because the world wasn't really ready. And you have to be patient. Overnight successes usually take a decade.
Yep.
You don't hear about that part, but that's
Right.
the average with businesses, who really start hitting their traction. It's usually about
Yeah.
year 9 or 10. So keep that in mind. Do you have a decade of your life to commit? And if you do, and you're passionate about it and you have a fire, then do it. Otherwise, go do something else.
Well, you're so right. If you are going to dip the first time something gets hard, you're right. You're better off not doing this because it
Yeah.
will get hard over and over and
Yeah.
over again. Just
Yeah.
as soon as you think you're over that one thing, then the next hard thing comes along.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Oh, that's so good. Well, thank you for doing this. Thank you
Yeah.
for taking a something that was scary for you and could have ended even worse, and creating something that is literally saving lives for so many others.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a lot of stories out there. One of them is Carl Carter. His mother lost her life in Arkansas. Her name was Beverly Carter. And this technology would have saved her. I met him a couple years ago, and he told me that. He said she was a real estate agent, and she was very prominent in the area, and she was kidnapped, and it would have saved her. And so when I think about pushing forward and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, it's because I know that there's people that need it, and we all need to protect each other. We all have sort of a moral imperative to do that. So those are the stories that kind of keep me going with it.
yeah. if someone listening wants to learn more, get this integrated with what they're doing, their employees, their company, how do they get in touch with you, Avery?
You can go to lifeknightai.com and there's a form you can fill out there. And I also have a LinkedIn, so you can share that with your audience as well. But that's usually the best way. You can ping me on LinkedIn or just fill out that form and we'll get in touch with you depending on, what it is that you need.
That's awesome. I will have you back for
Great.
an update because I definitely know that you will have one and expect so much out of this. So
Yeah.
there's so much more to talk about. Absolutely. No, thank you. Thank you for coming on, Avery.